Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special segment of the SWW show. It's me, AJ. It's time for an interview here with Howard from Muse Games, makers of Embr. The 10-second pitch is an Uber for firefighters.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the perfect, like, we've totally reached in the Embr universe. We've gone fully into there's a service for everything.
Yeah, I think that is pretty much the implication.
Yeah, I got a chance to hop into the alpha, and I must say the interface and like the comments that pop up after you finish a job is like perfect. Just that kind of meta internet humor of how people review things on everything.
Yeah. We definitely try to have everything kind of themed around that. Just the whole like app, gig economy app review type thing. So yeah, the whole. I mean, I guess I'm glad you find it that way. We definitely try to theme everything around that.
Yeah, and it works perfectly. Like, especially for these level based games, like creating an interface that gets you from point A to point B, but in world is always a struggle that a lot of games have. And like Embr does it well. The new Cook Serve Delicious does it really well. But there are very few games that I can think of that are like, oh yeah, it's a level-based game that's got a level select, but there's an in-universe, reason for the level select.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's definitely trying to tie world progression and how we gauge, player performance for, just I guess beating like each of the missions and then tie it to, this whole like client review theme. So yeah, it worked out. For some of the like, if I don't know if you got to try, kind of the bonus mission type or the different game modes, and they're kind of like they're themed as like bonus, like your bonus star or bonus flame. In the world progression, like so, if you beat them, you can actually get like an extra star that goes towards your cumulative total for your world progression. So yeah,
cool. And it's not a spoiler because it's like one of the first things that happened. It's like the third or fourth level that is in the game. Your Canadian invaders are hilarious. The accent was nailed perfectly, and just like, oh well, you guys think you're big and tough? No, we've got our like. If we go back to the Uber comparison, like it's Uber and Lyft, but the difference is Lyft isn't from Canada, but like it's a competing like, hey, we can do this too, and just that first interaction is hilarious with them, and it's really fun when you can, when people can make the baddies fun in universe. Because otherwise they're like, oh, they're a big bad, and a lot of people see big bads as like, oh, okay, they're just there. They don't necessarily connect with the character. And even though they're not really like characters, it's just a voice, you still connect to it because it's like, oh, this guy's trying to do this, and it's funny, and they kind of put you in a situation of like, oh, we kind of made a false claim on the app, but now you have to escape, and it's definitely a fun introduction.
Yeah, and I think later on when you get to kind of the boss, just kind of the direct boss confrontation, we definitely try to look at different ways where we tie the different mechanics that you will get to experience throughout the really now like the first chapter or the first district of the game, and to kind of reintroduce them in different ways in the boss fight, right? But I think another consideration is really kind of like what you said, is to see if you can find different ways to like structure that engagement without just kind of the traditional expectational model of just like, okay, let's just shoot it until it's dead, right? Because the whole core of Embr, it's firefighting, so it's like first person shooting, right? But you don't really get to kill anything, at least not directly.
Yeah,
So
it's a first person shooter where you're not shooting bullets, and the target that you're shooting at isn't an animate object. It's all like, I guess fire in a way is animate, but it's for the most part stationary. And yeah, you're quote unquote shooting water at fire. Like, it doesn't sound fun. It's not, because like work simulators are always the type of games that people are like, oh, I don't really want to do that. Like, it sounds interesting, but when it gets down to it, like, do I really want to drive a forklift around? No. Do I really want to drive a semi around? For me, yes, because I find the truck simulator games awesome. But to have like the interaction of, okay, it's not just that. It's you're running around saving oblivious people on their phones. You're trying to bounce people off trampolines to land them in mattresses. You're trying to yeet little girls off roofs to make sure they get to the rescue zone. All while you're an old lady.
Definitely. I think the part of what we wanted, like the kind of feeling, right, the engagement, the or the experience that we want players to have is really more of this frantic, hectic, just like you rush into the burning building and all kinds of stuff would just happen real time, and you have to like make quick decision, almost like time management, like where you had to basically like manage different things and do different things, and it's meant to be more hectic. And so the actual firefighting, there is that component, but a lot of it, so we actually early on Embr, we actually interview some firefighters, actual real life firefighters, just to kind of understand the nuance of like firefighting and what they do. And a lot of what they do is like really, really awesome, right? But it's also very compartmentalized. It's very like, they follow like pretty, strict protocol, and, for obvious reasons, right? Like, but, it's really more, yeah, I mean, definitely it's actually more like regimented, and it's more like step by step. A lot of like, a lot of what they do is it's, like going to the burning building is kind of the last step, like there was a lot of like work that they do around the building, to create ventilation, to create like passages, and remove obstructions and whatnot, that it's really cool, but it would have been a different feeling. And so in order to kind of like peel away that and just get to the arcadey, like engagement of it, in a way we kind of have to find a way to suspend disbelief, and which means like sort of remove a layer of realism. And so that's in part why it's themed this way. But I think also just because we wanted to make a state, kind of to have the game have a message, and to find a way where we could actually deliver satire without beating people over the head with it. So we kind of went in this like this humorous, satirical, comedic, making fun of the gig economy direction. Yeah,
And you guys nail that perfectly. Just like the introduction of the game, like, oh yeah, you're gonna go find the trainer for this, and he's around back on his phone, and like everybody you interact with is on their phone, which I guess is real. But I would, in a way, I want the like free cam I want to be able to free cam some levels after I'm done, just to see this frantic old lady running around, spraying water all over the building, running up, grabbing somebody, putting them over her shoulder, jumping out of a window, hitting the trampoline a couple times, going up on top, like some of the stuff that I had to do, not had, but ended up doing.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. I mean,
Yeah,
we actually have free cam as so we have all these like free cam and camera controls already built. And right now, like if you go through our Twitter feed, there's some like level fly throughs, and that's kind of how we recorded the fly throughs. And right now, it's just sort of us using it as a almost like as a debug tool. But it will be cool, later on down the road when we, essentially could introduce it as a spectator functionality. That would be pretty cool.
get the how Super Hot used to do it, where like everything was slow, but then at the end of the level they play it back at quote real speed. But being able to see just this frantic character, for me it was an old lady. You can change your character, it looks like down the road, but just this frantic lady running around with a detached fire hose, which I think makes it even funnier. Just the idea of this lady with not a magic necessarily fire hose, because it does run out of water, but just the nozzle of a fire hose. Like the mental image of that is a lady that just lost her marbles and is running around with a fire nozzle, but instead she's spraying water all over the place and saving people, and she's somehow a superhuman because she can just pick up people with one hand and run around and just chop with a fire axe. And it's definitely a fun, like, you hop into the game and you're gonna have fun. And the tutorial is great. It explains everything perfectly. And then you're given a couple levels and given the chance to explore, and you can go back and redo levels. So I found, like, for me, if I didn't get the 5-star right away, I'd just play through, find what everything I needed, and then like take the next 2 or 3 attempts and figure out, okay, I need to go find the breaker so I can turn off the power, or I need to make sure I go get this person because they start on fire, or things like that. And I noticed on your guys' Discord, like, there's a speedrunning, you know, side of this, which I'm going to just greatly enjoy watching people speedrun this game, because, given the chance to play it, I'm like, okay, there's, I guess, a way that you can do this fast, but there's also, like, it gives you the ability to, okay, you can basically put the entire house out if you want, and then do everything.
Yep. There are definitely multiple ways to approach the different levels. I mean, speedrun will be interesting. I mean, right now, the earlier levels that you got to play, they're, I mean, I guess the difference, the variance or the difference between, like, say, someone, regular person running through it and someone who's really fast, maybe like may not be as drastic. But I mean, it would be really interesting to see, how people approach some of the later levels, which are, significantly more complex. And to speedrun through those and see like what people do with them, like what tools they use and what tools they bring. I think it would be pretty fascinating, at least for me.
Yeah, seeing how, like, okay, how does somebody that is very good at this game compartmentalize, okay, I need to get this person, then this person, then this person. And that strategy, I think, is actually a really fun way to watch. Like, a lot of speedrunners, in a way, like, break the game, either through exploiting something or something like that. But it gives you an idea of, like, okay, this is how the system works. And then you can use that and go, like, okay, these interactions you can speed up by doing this. Or in Embr, you can, you basically, you're not required to get upgrades, but being able to break stuff with a fire axe while carrying somebody is a very useful upgrade. It's pretty expensive. You could get, I think, the fire extinguisher for the same price. But, it's one of those, okay, do you want the ability to break windows while carrying somebody, or do you want the fire extinguisher? Like your guys' path of, okay, you have a limited loadout, and it gives you the idea of like, okay, I want to choose the path of basically just get in, get the people out, and go, or I want to put the whole house out.
Yeah, definitely.
And I always like games that give the option of, even though it doesn't seem like there's paths, like the path of, for Embr, being able to shoot water a long distance and very accurately. So you could do it from across a room because maybe there's electricity and you need to find the source, but you want to put the fire out. Or there's the path of water grenades, just running in and let them go. Or there's the path of, okay, find everything that you can, or find the cash piles, rescue all the furniture, like get those tips.
Yeah, and there will be a game mode specifically for that.
Cool. Yeah, I think I got a tip on the first level and then just didn't care. I was like, okay, I'm just rescuing all the people, and if money ends up becoming a thing, I'll go back and rescue some furniture. But other than that, people, your house is on fire. I'm getting you out. I'm not going back for your stuff. You only tipped me like $5.
Yeah. It's definitely interesting. I mean, we've seen so far just like people approaching the game pretty differently. Some people are just like, yeah, we're just gonna strictly get the people out, and some people do want to take time and do other things or just mess around. So yeah, it's kind of satisfying just to see, so far, just to see that there are different approaches to to a mission, and people really, I mean, part of the kind of our design philosophy is to really allow for as much of a possibility as possible. So if you want to take an axe and hack off the switch, and you want to toss your client off of a balcony, onto a trampoline, like there's just like a lot of, I mean, in a way you can do maybe not everything that you want to do, but like a lot of things that you could think of doing. So I think earlier part of the kind of the design philosophy almost is just, well, hey, what is someone supposed to do that? Well, yeah, we're gonna make it happen.
Yeah, the freedom of, there's a lot of stuff that you're like, oh, you can actually do that? Like bouncing people off trampolines. If you were good enough, you could be at the top of the building and bounce them down floors and into rescue zone. Or you could be like me and throw them off the balcony and they land just in front of the fence, and then think that you can get some more distance if you're higher, thinking of physics, and instead you kill two people with, I guess, one stone. The death message is hilarious. Like, oh, they didn't make it this time. Guess you'll have to do better next time. Is such a like, well, I guess how in a world where you're being very satirical with the gig economy. How do you, like, a lot of these apps, their failure messages are something similar. They're a oh, I guess the app crashed, so guess you didn't get paid for the past 3 trips that you gave, or stuff like that. And to have that message of like, oh, I guess they didn't make it, and then just 2 skeletons laying on the ground next to each other, I'm like, all right, really funny. I have to start this over because I needed one of those people to make it. Yeah, it's just, you guys have nailed the humor, the satirical aspect of this to a T. The art style is amazing. Everybody go wishlist this on Steam. And it comes out the end of this month, correct?
Yeah, it comes out on the 21st,
21st.
into early access.
Cool. So yeah, people, it'll be up on Steam. Again, it's currently on the store, so you can add it to your wish list. Um, then goes live the 21st. Yes, it'll be early access, but honestly, what game isn't at this point? Like, I mean,
Yeah, I
we,
mean,
we
with
live in a
early
world of live games, right? So like every game is early access.
yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good point. I mean, so the game is not, so we have a lot more content and a lot more mechanics and systems and features that we wanted to add. So there's a bigger scope that we have in mind, and we'll obviously continue to just keep adding to the game. I think early access, at least what we're hoping for, is just get a lot of feedback, just because I think with the demo, which it's been great. People have been like trying the demo, and they've been giving us a lot of feedback. But for some of the later levels and some of the new stuff that we're adding, we're definitely going to continue to need player feedback. And a lot of times, we just get like really cool ideas, right, that we want to implement from players. So like we want that to continue. So I think a lot of early access is just you know hopefully having players to like, give players a forum to give us feedback and for us to keep iterating on the game. And yeah, we actually anticipate to be in early access for at least 9 months. So we're thinking like 9 to 12 months, and release the full game sometime in May of next year. And so if people get the game now, they can just expect us to give them updates, add new content for them, pretty much for free. So
Yeah, I mean, the best time to get into a game at this point is right when it releases, because almost every game now is either some form of early access or it's a live game, so they constantly get updated. And yeah, why not hop in, when it's $20, we'll say, instead of potentially 40 next year when it releases and it's a full game. Like, yes, the business side of that from your point of view isn't great because you're losing out on a full sale, but you have people that are willing to take a risk. And well, not I mean, a lot of people are in the position right now of being able to take a ton of risks. This is a game that I don't think it's a risk to, when this releases, go out and purchase it. This isn't a early access because it barely works. This is a early access. It works. They're just going to add some stuff to it. It's pretty darn close to a finished game right now. I can tell you that much.
oh, thanks. Yeah, I think we definitely want to get the game in obviously as good of a shape as we humanly possibly can. It's probably not completely bug free, but generally it's pretty playable. It should be pretty stable. I think I feel like if we charge people money, we're like really any dollar amount, any money, and the game is like broken, it's not playable, then it just I don't feel like we're doing the right thing here. I mean, I don't think that's like for us anyway, like ethically acceptable. So we definitely want to make sure that the game is like really playable and people have fun with it. And we'll just keep adding, maybe not as for as long of a duration, or as much of a total playtime as like people would want for a fully like officially released game. But yeah, I mean the goal for us is definitely just keep adding content until we get to like a full scope, a full vision. So yeah.
Well, Howard, I will tell you this. I am looking forward to your guys' early access release later in the month. Yeah, everyone, go check out Embr on Steam. If you're curious, it's Embr without the second E. It's totally the gig economy app of, hey, we're going to take a vowel out.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Howard, it was great to talk to you. And yeah, looking forward to the soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to, I'm hoping, the tail end of these quarantine edition episodes, but really, we're all in quarantine for a long, long time, it feels like. Anyway, I'm Mike. Today with me, a special guest. So, could please tell me your name and the game we're here to talk about?
Sure, Patrick Donahue, and the game is Life Hutch VR.
Yeah, so Patrick, immediately, as we were kind of talking before too, I feel, just to get a bit of ideas, we'll get into what is Life Hutch VR. You have we'll call it a very seasoned background in the entertainment industry. Do you mind going over, at least to getting, top level, kind of, your background, kind of going into this game?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you for calling me seasoned. I'll take that as a compliment. But it's the short version of my background is I started as a filmmaker, worked on various commercials, music videos, low budget, features that no one's ever seen, and then ended up in computer animation and ultimately in sort of software development. Worked in the television industry for a long time. Won 3 or 4 Emmys and got a bunch of patents. So I'm sort of this weird, sort of oddball, sort of hybrid, like probably a lot of people in the game industry, where I've got a very creative side, graphic design, 3D animation, but also pretty tech side, which is sort of, reflected in the Emmys and the patents. But ultimately was an executive at a cable company in charge of software development for mobile applications, streaming video, how you buy movies on TV, and user experience and design and all that stuff. So, it was a really good ride and not a logical sort of progression to video games, really, other than I'm a huge gamer, always have been. And, again, just as a filmmaker, I sort of combined all my love of great design and great storytelling and action and adventure. And at this point in my career, I thought, I want to make a game. I want to do something really interesting and cool and unusual. So that was kind of how I ended up, where I am today.
So you wanted to just make a game. So just to clarify, is this the first big game you've made as a commercial developer then, or have you kind of poked at stuff in the back?
Yeah, no, this is my first game. I mean, gosh, I built, not me personally, but my team and I built some of the very early games that you could play on your television with your cable set-top box. Pretty simple stuff that, card games and checkers and backgammon and things like that. So have done game services like that. But for me as an individual and with my company, this is our first commercial title. Where we really just decided we wanted to build something beyond sort of the prototyping and things that we all do. Build something, deploy it, go through that whole process on Steam and some of the other stores. So this is our first real title.
Perfect. So let's jump into it then. Can you let's start there then. What is your elevator pitch when I meet you in the elevator GDC for 30 seconds? What is Life Hutch VR?
Yeah, so Life Hutch VR is a sort of unusual hybrid of a cinematic linear story and a video game. And it takes the best of both in terms of immersiveness and feeling like you're truly in the story, but also in a way that the story has a logical progression and has an ending, and it has a sort of story arc and ends with a very clear conclusion, and that's it. So it sort of takes the best of storytelling, but also adds the interactivity that gamers sort of obviously love and sort of demand.
Okay, so obviously I think this, talking to you immediately and then this kind of pitch immediately, obviously this is very heavy on your film background, just because logistically. I'm curious on the immediate side of it, why did you choose to make this? Because I think you still are kind of selling it as a game, and it still feels like fundamentally it is a game first, but with very heavy story elements and entertainment and that aspect elements. Why make it a game versus more of a pure interactive film, as we've seen with early VR stuff, for example?
Yeah, I mean, I know you do development as well, and you understand this space. So, we started this project 3 years ago, which in some ways doesn't seem like a long time ago, but in obviously the technology and game space, that's 100 years. So, when I started the conceptualization, which probably goes back more than 3 years, VR was much less sophisticated, much less sort of robust. It was very much a nascent technology, right? And so lots of lessons learned in this project. And one of the lessons I learned here is that, there is a time to market factor where things just will, if you don't get it done fast enough, they're going to start to look, a little dated, right? So, in the VR space, when we first started this, a lot of the conventions that you see now that have, I think, Half-Life Alyx is by far the best, VR experience ever created. You look at just the sophisticated interaction models and the way that they've solved a lot of problems of how do you grab things and move with things and walk. And, that stuff has been happening in real time, right? So being, relatively early to the space, we had to really figure out with not a lot to work with, how do you tell a story using VR, and how do you, just the simple mechanics, again, stuff we've all been trying to figure out. How do you move? How do you walk? How do you open doors? How do you interact with things? And so that was, I think, the challenge from the very beginning is, take a story that you want to tell that has, again, a very clear beginning, middle, and end. And how do you allow enough interaction into that so that it's fun and engaging and you truly feel like you have some control? But ultimately, there's only one ending, right? Ultimately, you have to go through a series of steps. You have to hit a certain series of story points, and then ta-da, conclusion, and sort of that's, the big finish, right? So, that's been really, I think, the challenge with VR is how do you do that? You've probably seen 360 videos where, and I shoot a lot of that being a former cinematographer, and it's kind of amazing. I'm very lucky. I've traveled the world. I've gone to some pretty amazing places like, exploring the streets of Pripyat and Chernobyl and taking incredible 360 videos. And that's an amazing sort of way to capture that. But you can't interact with 360 videos. So as cool as it is to stand there in the middle of a abandoned, radioactive city in 360 video, that's all I can do, right? I can look around, right? So I think you need that VR component, the way we do with game engines to allow people to really truly step into it and touch it and feel it.
That's a very interesting, I think, way to describe all that. And I've done a lot with 360 like videos and pictures too. And immediately, it's always interesting explaining to people that because they go into these experiences being like, "What do you mean? It's all 3D. It's all there." And I go, "No, it's really not all there. Like it's an infinite distance from you. You just don't realize it." And that's why when people walk around in those, they really go, "Oof."
Right. Yeah, it's cool when you stand right there, and it is pretty amazing. But I felt it's somewhat limiting as a filmmaker and as a storyteller, and again as a more of a just a sort of to capture it, it's amazing way to say, look, you can experience what I did, walking again through the streets of Chernobyl, but well, actually not walking through the streets, but standing, right? Because you can't walk. And so I love it from that perspective, but I really like what you can do with VR because you can add that true level of interaction and immersiveness that's I just don't think you can do any other way, really.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So as we're talking about storytelling, I'm curious. So one of the things about this game is you are in, correct me if I'm wrong, the world that another an old sci-fi writer wrote. Can you kind of talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. So again, being seasoned, quote unquote, I when I started this project, and again, early days of VR, one of things about VR was walking and locomotion and everything was sort of like not really figured out. And it was sort of like, okay, how do we do this in a way that's interesting? And so as I originally started developing for Google Cardboard and Gear VR and those types of things, which are even more limited. And I thought, I need a story that doesn't require a person to like walk around and because that's hard and it's sort of clunky and not great. And so I spent a lot of time just either writing stories, looking at comic books and different properties that I thought might have something really cool. And I landed on this story that I had actually read probably when I was like 14 or 15 years old. And it's a short story. It was actually written in 1956. It's a short story written by a pretty famous science fiction writer by the name of Harlan Ellison. And he actually passed away during the production, so unfortunately I never got to show it to him. But he's written a lot of stories, but he's probably most famous for, he wrote an episode of the original Star Trek. I believe it's called City on the Edge of Forever, which, I think won an Emmy. So he goes back a long time, and very influential writer, pretty edgy, apparently a bit of a curmudgeon. I never met him, but pretty tough dude, and but a great writer. And his stuff, again, this is a story written in 1956. Pretty edgy stuff for 1956. And he actually had a series of stories in this sci-fi universe that Life Hutch takes place in. There's a series of probably 10 or 12 stories that really the center piece of it is mankind, say 100 to 200 years ago, that sort of near future sort of sci-fi reality, suddenly is confronted with an alien race that just sort of, they bump into each other out in space and immediately just start fighting and killing each other and, doing terrible things to each other. And that was really inspired by the Vietnam War and sort of the senseless sort of cruelty of Vietnam. And so he wrote these stories about these two people that really didn't even know why they were fighting, two races, right? They didn't know why they were fighting. They didn't really know why they hated each other, but it was kind of too late. And so they just doubled down on it. And there's a couple of really touching, poignant stories in the series that really talk about just the senselessness of the violence and those types of things. So Life Hutch VR is, maybe a 10, 12 page story that is one of the stories in this series that he wrote. And it's about a guy, just a regular guy who happens to be a fighter pilot, and goes through a series of things. I won't tell too much because I want people to try it out for themselves, but he's going through a series of challenges ultimately to survive, right? And that's kind of the core thread that runs through the whole story, which I don't think I fully understood until I got into writing the script. Was ultimately this story is about the ingenuity of man and his incredible desire to survive and figure things out, and how we are just sort of fundamentally wired at our sort of core genetic level to figure out how to not die, basically. And so this whole sort of story progresses as he sort of is constantly being challenged with things that either want to kill him or will kill him through one means or another. And really that's really what I think the main theme of the story is that the strength of the sort of human condition to just want to continue.
So I'm curious, obviously when this was written, it wasn't written for interactivity or for virtuality or any of these fun technologies you've tied into it. How much, right, when writing this, did you go for like a literal interpretation of the story, or did you want to make sure more broadly you had the themes and the fundamental ideas there while making it modernized for this interactivity?
It's interesting. So, a little bit of both. I mean, in some ways I was very accurate in terms of the story structure, in terms of scene by scene. I follow his basic story arc almost exactly. Because honestly, I thought it was great the way it was, and it really didn't need any change. I think there was also a part of me that I had hoped and assumed that I would ultimately, he would see it and I would show it to him. And I was in the back of my mind was always this little bit of a trepidation of like, geez, I really don't want him to hate this. So I was sort of like, part of me was like, don't mess with this too much, because he's known for being, like I said, a bit prickly, and litigious, quite frankly. But, so I was very aware of that, and truthfully, I didn't feel like it needed a lot of changes. That being said, so the basic story arc is what it is, and it is very consistent with the original story. I even used certain lines of dialogue that he wrote because, again, they were right, they were good. And you probably know this from game development, and I think this is particularly true of VR, is it's hard to move the story forward in certain ways without dialogue and conversation. Well, the vast majority of this game is one guy by himself. So how do you do that, right? And that was kind of a big challenge for me. And most of the story actually is this guy having a conversation with himself in his head. He's sort of, what do I do? How do I do this? Oh my God, this is terrible, whatever. And I just couldn't figure out a way to like have that sort of internal dialogue that we all have in a game and have it not be like super odd and confusing. so one of the things I did was I invented a character, sort of like, I guess, since I've just been replaying Halo, sort of like Cortana, just the computer voice in your head, right? Just sort of helped you solve problems. So I invented this character called Angel, which is really just a computerized assistant. And she kind of says, do this, go here, this is what's going on. So that is just as a story device became a really easy way to kind of help the players understand what's going on. I think the other major change I made was there was a bit, I felt there was a plot point that was not clear in the story, which I don't want to give away too much, but there's a robot that is this sort of very menacing robot, and it wasn't clear why the robot suddenly kind of loses its mind, and so we had to kind of build in a backstory there and invent some characters to sort of explain the what happened, that led to this very key sort of story element. But other than that, honestly, it's I think very faithful to the original story, which was part of my goal, frankly.
Interesting. So as we get towards the tail end of this, I have a couple more questions. One of the ones I'm very curious about, since we kind of lead it to the beginning, is this is you and your team's first full-blown video game in the professional sense of I'm going to create a thing to fundamentally release it into the public for general viewing, all that. What has been the toughest thing through this process that you didn't expect to be this absurdly tough thing?
Interesting. Well, my team is in Ukraine, which I've done a lot of offshore work, and generally that works well as long as you do good documentation and all that sort of thing. It's still tough. So we had, time zone issues, language issues, and just not physically being in the same space, which, it's the way of the world now. I get it. And I've certainly done a ton of work offshore, but there are some sort of innate inefficiencies that come with that. There's a lot of cost savings too. So that's the trade-off, right? So I would say in a perfect world, I would have had my team right there, because, you can look at something, and you probably know this from the work you do. You can sit at someone's cubicle. You can look at what they're doing and say, no, change this, or, oh, that's really great. When you add, 7-hour time differences, there's a 24-hour turnaround every time you want to say, no, change that. So there's a lot of that, I think, just sort of, again, it's sort of inherent in offshoring, which, is tricky. I think the other thing that we found really challenging was the certification process for the Oculus Rift, which I have to tell you, I think the Oculus tools are phenomenal. They're a validator tool. They've got these wonderful, software that allows you to get all kinds of diagnostic reports and frame rates and this and that, and, really excellent tools. I would say their developer support is probably the best I've ever seen, which is good, because the sort of criteria for frame rates are really aggressive for low-end GPUs. So it is really tough to make something, for me, right, I'm clearly a cinematic guy, and most of the really nice comments I get about the game is just how beautiful it looks and just how rich and wonderful it is, which, for me is a great compliment as a former filmmaker. But boy, it is tough making that work on, I'm trying to think, these low-end cards. So there was a process where we had to continually take out lighting effects, take out particles, take out, all those things to try to get it down, and, remove geometry. And so that was, for us, I would say, the biggest challenge, to the point where we actually, because I wanted it to look as beautiful as it did, we actually created sort of a quality switch in the game, so that there's the default sort of quality, which is, allows us to get certification in Oculus, and then there's you click the switch to the enhanced version, and it looks, 10 times better, which I assume, most people with VR rigs have pretty decent graphics cards, unless you bought, first gen system and you've never upgraded. So my hope and assumption is most people are going to switch over to the enhanced graphics, because it's just a much, much better experience, just much nicer to look at.
Oh, okay. One more thing I'm curious about. So you said the team's in the Ukraine. Is this something, so obviously we saw with this, there's pluses and there's minuses to this you being so far away from them and logistically. Is that something that next time, if you make another game, you want to do again, or is it kind of like after the experience, you're like, no, this was an interesting experience, but I feel the disadvantages are too strong?
It's a really good question. Like I say, I've done tons of offshoring in India, Russia, other places in my former career. And it is a reality of the new world. And truthfully, with us in quarantine at this point, whether a guy, I'm in New York, right? So whether the guy is in Queens or Chicago or Florida, we're all kind of, working remotely anyway. So look, I mean, there's huge advantages from a cost perspective, and we're a small company. We're trying to keep our costs down. So being in New York, I mean, we pay a premium for developers here in New York, and engineers are really in high demand. So, it would be tough for me to produce something like this in New York, strictly from a cost perspective. If I lived in another part of the country, maybe, but there's great talent here, but they're just very expensive. I would say the artists that I worked with, just spectacular. Just truly like the concept artists. If any of your listeners love that kind of stuff, there's some of our concept art on our website, which is lifehutchvr.com. I'm actually going to put up some more because I just really love the sort of, concept pre-visualization work we did. It's really stunning sort of, film quality type work. So I thought the artists were excellent. The 3D artists were phenomenal. So there's incredible talent, especially in that part of the country. But yeah, it's tough. Again, the language barrier. I thought I would learn Russian during this project because I've worked with a lot of Russians over the years. I did not learn very much Russian or Ukrainian. So, that made it a little tough for me. So yeah, language, time zones, all those things, tricky.
Yeah. Even so, I just do a lot more in the scheduling, the interview side of them. Yeah, there are shockingly how many times you're like meetings at this time, and one of us didn't realize that like daylight savings time was a thing, or just logistically, you're like, oh god, half the time you're like, can we just not have time zones?
Yeah, we ran into that many times, like twice a year, I guess, basically, where suddenly half of us would be on the call at the wrong time. And, we do all our, scrums and everything at usually like 7 a.m. because that's when it kind of works for everybody. Right. So yeah, it's tough. And only two of the guys on our team really spoke English well. So the producer and the PM. So, everything had to filter through them, which makes it tough. But great guys, And interestingly enough, I mean, you're a developer, so maybe you understand this. So, I'm a halfway decent developer. I've been coding on and off, my entire adult life. When I go into Unity, which is what we built it in, it's coded in English. So I don't know how they do that, or I don't even know how that works. I guess I just don't understand how that works. But yeah, I don't know. I guess they're not coding in Russian because I can open it up and I can read, what they're doing. So.
Oh yeah, logistically, I guess it's one of those things that like until you run into, you never think about something like that of like even like keyboards are different or other things of like, oh, how do we translate this when we have two versions of Unity in different languages running? Like,
yeah,
it just gets weird.
I have no idea. Yeah, I have no idea how that works. It was pretty funny because I wrote all the scripts and all the copy and all the dialogue, and they would put it in, but most of them didn't know what they were looking at. So I would inevitably have to do a lot of proofing of stuff. Just like when they send me Russian, I don't know what I'm looking at either, right? So, so those are interesting challenges, but again, been doing that for a lot of years, so that's fine. And the good news is there's incredible talent all over the world, and I really enjoy working with people all over the world because they get some really interesting perspectives. So it's a worthwhile process as long as you do it properly, I would say.
Nice. So now I have to ask the tough question. It's kind of like when you have to choose your favorite child question. After working now in multiple entertainment mediums over the years, what on a fundamental guttural level is like your favorite, or like if you only had to work in one, which would you work in?
Let's see. From a pure satisfaction standpoint, as an artist, I really like this world. I mean, Life Hutch is hopefully the first of many projects. And maybe this is just because of who I am, but, again, as a filmmaker, as an artist, as a 3D guy, as a pseudo coder, I love the potential for what we can create. in VR in particular, and in general, kind of the video game space, because they're so rich now. Again, I've been playing games. I mean, my first real gaming computer was an Amiga, which a lot of the guys listening to your podcast may not even know, but that was an amazing machine in its day. But, it's to see how good things look and sound, and how robust the game engines are now, and just the quality of the assets. It's kind of a perfect storm of opportunities for people to make really great stuff without spending piles of money. It's just, the fact that the game engines are so good and they're basically free, if you keep it under a certain, I think $250,000 or something. That's just an incredible resource. So, I love the space. I think it's amazing what you can do. The tools are there. I struggle a little with VR because just the installed base isn't that big. So, if I were a smart businessman, I would probably not choose VR because you're limited by the number of headsets out there. I post about the game and all my friends in the entertainment industry are like, oh my God, that's amazing. I wish I had a VR rig. Right. And so that's part of the reason we made a desktop version, because I wanted to be able to demo it. And also I know a lot of people won't be able to see it. It's way better in VR. So I hope that people get VR rigs. But again, if you're a straight up businessman, VR is not going to be your number one choice. You're going to develop for mobile because there's however many hundreds of millions of mobile phones out there. For me, that wouldn't be as interesting. So I'm hoping VR gets wider adoption. I'm hoping some of the really great headsets like the Quest, I think, is a really great headset, especially with the link cable, so you can kind of have the best of both worlds in terms of, fidelity of graphics, but also portability and convenience. So I guess I just read the Quest 2, I think, is on the roadmap to come out. So, that would be the question, right? Is VR going to become common enough, widely distributed enough that guys like us can really justify the cost of making some of these games,
And that is the, I think, the age old, I don't know if problem. It's interesting because VR is growing in the sense, but it's so much growing more on the B2B side or the simulation side where it totally is the VR as a consumer product, I think, is getting there, but I think that cost barrier is still so high for the bulk of people that it's very interesting to watch.
Yeah, $1,000 is a lot of money for people to invest in some of this technology. And you're right, the sort of enterprise side, it's like, huge, right? Just like AR and VR, that's huge because they have tons of money, they can afford it. But that's a lot of money for a consumer, and you've got to give them a really compelling experience. Which is again why Alex came out with the Valve Index, right? Ultimately, they could never have justified the expense of that game, which is just stunning, unless it was basically as a marketing expense for that headset, right? So the question is, when do we get to that point where there's enough headsets out there that it starts to bring in the developers and bring in, unfortunately, the money which is required in order to, give guys like us, what we need to continue going on this business.
Well, Patrick, I want to say thank you again for sitting down and talking to me during this fun Thursday morning during the pandemic outside. So just to clarify, people, the game is Life Hutch VR. It is lifehutchvr.com. Is that right? Is there any other place I'm missing?
That is right. It's also on Steam, and it's on the Viveport store, and hopefully coming soon to the Oculus store.
Perfect. Well, again, Patrick, thanks for sitting down with me, and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another one of these fun interview special episodes of the SWW show. I'm Mike. Today I have with me a special guest who's working on, I'd say, post-apocalyptic game, but I guess right now we'll call it the modern times, I guess is the best way to put it. Can you, sir, please tell us your name and the game that you're here to talk about?
Hello, my name is Anton, and I'm working on the game Atom RPG.
Perfect, yeah. So, Atom RPG, immediately, I think it is everything you guys talk about too. When you go in this game, it feels like, you guys were giant fans of, like, the original Fallout and Wasteland titles. I'm curious, was that just, like, going into it where you just, like, I miss this type of game? Or kind of, like, where did this initial, like, push for, like, going back to this very 90s nostalgic kind of title go from?
Well, the initial idea of creating game like that, I mean, like Atom RPG is something similar to classic Fallouts, like Fallout 1, Fallout 2. The initial idea was in 2008, and it was our programmer, Dmitry. He was fiddling with this idea. He was thinking, maybe I should do something like that. So I think he started creating an engine, like an in-house engine for this game. But since he was in high school at the moment, it didn't really go that far. So time passed. He started working in gaming industry, and in 2015, just in his spare time, he decided to make a technical demo for Atom again, like to create this idea of his. Just put it out on the internet, and just people started flocking in who were interested in making such a game, like a classic RPG. Basically, not specifically Fallout-like, even though, of course, Atom is a very Fallout-like game, but just people who liked classical RPGs, and by classical I mean like classical Western, like Baldur's Gate, Fallout, Iceland, I don't know, etc., a lot of them. So I was one of those people, and till 2017 we worked on the game on our time, and in 2017 we started a Kickstarter campaign, and after that came a company, let's say a team, official team.
That's interesting. I think immediately how long the game's development for. Like that's an immediate thing of like, wow, that's the idea of floating around for that long. So I'm curious then, like, because you said originally you weren't part of the original founding that way. How did you get on the project? Let's start from there, kind of. 'Cause obviously, I think if people kind of hear too. Mm-hmm. You guys aren't from, like obviously I'm from, like, America and those kind of, a lot of audiences, but you guys are definitely not from America. You guys are from, like, Eastern Europe and stuff, too. So I'm very curious, like, how this all came to be in that way.
Basically, my story is very simple. I was just, I was just sitting on the internet doing nothing, wasting time, and I just, accident, I just found a video of Atom. Somebody found this technical demo that Dmitry made, played it, and it was a very small video, like, I don't know, like 300 users, and I can't tell you right now how I found it. So, and I watched it and was like, this looks cool. I mean, I don't know, this looks cool. So I started searching. I found the website where, call it like game developer website, where he was sitting. I just registered there and I wrote like, listen, maybe you need a writer or something, writing dialogues, quests and stuff like that for the game. And he was like, yeah, sure, cool. So that's how I joined the team in 2015.
Like, obviously these teams come together a lot of times. You hear these stories of, like, teams just found each other and just now made a game. I've always found it interesting when those teams, like, the idea actually works, because a lot of times you get these, like, internet teams or these scattered things, also the game just kind of stops one day, or, like, it never happens. So it's always fascinating when, like, the game actually goes through development and happens.
Yeah. Well, since, I mean, like I said, like, the idea was from 2018, so 2008, so, like, people who were standing behind were very determined, and people who stayed in the company were also, like, very determined people, yeah. Again, like, as I said, like, we worked on the game in 2017, I would even say, like, till the end of 2017, even after the Kickstarter campaign. Most of the team worked on the game still in their free time, in their spare time. So it's like, you're doing your job, you're doing something, and then after that you go home and you you sit before your computer and start just developing Atom. So, but that was something we'll choose to do.
That's interesting. So let's jump into Atom, and it's obviously I'd call it a sequel, whatever you want to call it, Trudograd a little more of. So obviously one of the big things with the Fallout games on a fundamental level is they're very American-centric, because where they were made, like, it's 50s Americana, like, all that. Your games are not that. Your games are set in Eastern Europe, specifically in the Soviet Union. So I'm very curious, like, when you guys are going through that cycle of it, what are the pieces you pull from that idea of like how do you make it very Soviet Union? Again, it's probably America doesn't understand that, but like what do you guys are like the nostalgic part of that kind of you pulling from?
That's actually a hard question. I wouldn't say that we're necessarily trying to make it nostalgic or something like that. It's just, I mean, I guess it's nostalgic to a certain point. Basically, like we're just, it's hard to say. Like I don't know. I mean, we all grew up and we're all born and grew up in Eastern Europe. Some of the guys in the team were even grow up in Soviet Union still. So everybody kind of, even after the Soviet Union collapsed, everybody kind of had and have like understanding how it looks, how it operated. But we kind of based, I guess, the game world on that. Like it's not specifically necessarily Soviet Union. It's more like 90s based fantasy. What Soviet Union could have looked like if a nuclear war would happen. So yeah, like that.
So maybe nostalgia was the right term. I just find it very interesting again because the like obviously like when I picture the idea of like what we define as Fallout in America, like it's a very image of like, oh, I understand like where these images came from. That's always very interesting watching like you guys kind of flip it on your head in that sense of like watching that of like, oh, this is kind of like where the opposite end of the world kind of viewed their version of the similar time period of what would happen, kind of.
Yeah.
So then let's jump then, I would say, to some of the mechanics, and I would say what is defined a lot of times with these games, kind of looking back at them now, is they, like, people love them at the time, but they're very hard to get into. So I'm curious, kind of, from a usability point of view, kind of like what you guys focused on to make sure that, like, the modern gamer still found something in these games.
Actually, when we first started developing Atom, the idea was to make it, I would say, to make it very unfriendly to the general player. Like, I think we even knew that, like, you could do some in UI something better, but we were like, nah, we're gonna do it the old way. Like, it should be, should right in the face how hard it is, how hardcore. But then when we got on Steam, we started working actually working with people, and even before that, where we started like letting out first like demos, free demos of the game, the internet. We started working with the people. We saw how people reacted to certain things, and we're like, okay, maybe that was a dumb idea. Maybe we should kind of make it a little bit more user friendly. But actually, still, when we released Atom as a complete game in the end of 2018, it was still kind of wonky at times. And people were giving their feedback. And we actually changed the game in updates after that. Didn't change the game all that much. We changed moments, made it more user-friendly because our players were giving us feedback how to do it better, how they see it should be done. But we just kind of listened to them and made it like that. I don't know, like right now with Trudograd, I hope, made it even more user-friendly, but again, it's an ongoing process. So probably when we release Trudograd, it will be more, I don't know, less hardcore, I guess. At least less hardcore when I'm talking about UI and stuff like that.
Because I would argue from what I've played of you guys are kind enough to give me some code. The game still has the difficulty. Like it's not like I feel like you guys still nailed it. This isn't inherently blindly easy, and so I'm very curious. Then kind of, I assume you guys have watched the success in recent years of more difficult stuff, either in the strategy genres or obviously like you have the Souls ideas of like no, difficulty can work. It's just a matter of how you portray the difficulty.
Yeah, but it was always like, at least in Eastern Europe. I don't want to generalize and say like, oh, everybody in Eastern Europe would do it like that. Like difficult games are actually very respected. I don't know why. Like if it's more difficult, it's better. Like if it's just like a complete ball buster, great, it will go. So I don't know. So it's always like we knew that people because of course like the start we were creating it, I guess, when we were just doing it from our bedrooms. We're creating it for just people on the forum that we were seeing, people on our group on our social media, just talking with those people when we still didn't have Steam and stuff like that. And we knew that what those people wanted, and we knew what we wanted from a game, so we wanted it to be quite hard. There wasn't any special idea behind it. It was just natural, I guess.
I'm curious, actually, now that we talk about, because obviously you guys are culture European and you define it more like even mechanically or like that kind of stuff of it. Is your audience that you've seen sales and response to it, has it been very heavily in Europe? Have you seen more of a global response to the game?
It's actually, quite global. We have a lot of players from USA, from America. We also have a lot of players actually from Asia, and since we have a Chinese translation of the game, that of course helps a lot. Interestingly enough, we have a lot of more global audience, I guess. At the start, was more like it was probably more Eastern European based, but eventually, I can't even say from what country there are more players. I'm not really sure. It's all around the world. Yeah.
Interesting. So, as you guys have seen then global sales, I'm curious, have you guys felt a need to adjust the game at all to be more akin to a global audience? Or are you very much like, no, this is what we're making, I don't care where it sells, this is kind of like our general vision of the game?
Depends. I mean, in case of translation, we actually work. If we talk about English translation, we're working with a great writer, Scott Ham, who also worked on a lot of other RPGs. So, kind of helping us to edit the translation, make it better, make it more, I guess, understandable for not only American audience, but like audience from all around the world. Because, of course, like in the game originally is written in Russian, and there's a lot of, jokes and references and stuff like that I think probably from most countries wouldn't understand. So we kind of changed it a little bit for the English version. So, but I think it's just a respectable thing to do to the players. But other than that, I don't really know what we can change in the game. To appeal for a more general audience, I don't know.
So now I'm curious. Now that we've kind of broadly talked about you guys in this too, let's jump into. So as we're talking, I'm going to pronounce this correctly, I hope. Trudograd, is that how I would say it?
Trudograd.
Trudograd, okay.
Trudograd. Oh, it doesn't matter.
So it just launched in early access like 2 days from us recording this. So you guys are chucking the sucker in early access. I'm curious, kind of, from your point of view, what is the point of early access in a content-heavy game like this, where that's usually the type of games I feel like are the ones that you see either do really well in early access or fall on their faces because it's very content-heavy as people go through it. Their motivation to do it again and again becomes harder and harder.
Basically, our idea, we just put a lot of, different ways how you can certain situation, do certain quests, a lot of secrets, and a lot of stuff like that. Because it was like with Adam. Like Adam was in early access. What I was probably a year, maybe even more than a year. It was in early access, and still we have a lot of players who bought it in early access right when we just released it there, and who actually still are with us, who are still, who now bought Trudograd, and they're writing their comments there, and writing to us. They maybe found some bug or something like that. So I don't know. I guess people just find a lot of pleasure in stated, like dissecting those games, like looking for different ways, looking for different approaches to situations, and we like it ourselves. We like to add such things in the game. So maybe that's the ticket. I don't know, really.
So early access then to you guys, you'd say, is much more of a. Would you say then you use it much more for a balancing point of view, or to like figure out what content you have to add next?
It's balancing and content, of course, because right now we watched some responses at the moment, and I'm already starting to think like, okay, now maybe we need to change the strategy for the next update. Maybe we need to, add more, for example, like more battle quests or something like that, quests where we need to defeat someone. But that's just at the moment. Like maybe it will change when more feedback will come. Oh, sure. And balancing, absolutely, yes. We're already, like, even in the first patches, we already made changes to the balance, just because people like pointed out that we did something wrong there. So it's very important, I think.
It's interesting. So how would you guys then, in a lot of ways, because I'd say in early access is always interesting, because like when we define from early access to a complete game, I feel like it's very different game to game. What are you guys looking for to be like, okay, now the game is quote unquote done and we're going to release it to out of early access?
Well, basically the game should be finishable. It should be complete from A to B, and should have all the. Will have. You could say, of course, it can change when you process of development. We like have like a roadmap in our heads, like what we want to achieve, what we want to put in the game. So when we know that it's ready, then we will release the game. So right now we're thinking it's probably will be possible to completely release the game in the late autumn, maybe start of the winter, worst case scenario. But it's possible. And we kind of, at the moment, we're pretty sure that we will do everything that we want to put in the game those dates. But who knows? We'll see. If for some reason maybe there will be something new that we want to put in there, or see that there's no time, maybe then we'll take. I'm starting to rumble here. Maybe they will take more time to develop, but I don't know if it's going to happen.
So I have a couple, as we get to the tail end here, a couple more fun questions to you. As you've worked on these games for a while now, as we'll say. My first one is immediately either in the most recent game or the one before it. What is your favorite, most insane bug you've seen and had to have squished in the game?
Actually, yeah, that's the cigarette bug. The cigarette bug, and we actually didn't squish it in the first item. What I'll explain what it is. Maybe you find it out, maybe you read about it, but I'll tell it. I'll tell it. So the idea, you can take stuff like objects in your hands in the game, and you can use it on other characters or on other objects on the game world. For example, you can take a bottle of vodka or something like that, and you can give it to an NPC, and NPC will actually drink it and say like, "Oh yeah, thank you, that's very nice of you." And and you can basically any such items that you can use on other characters. Now, thing is, we have item cigarette. Now, this item gives you a bonus to your crafting. It takes 1 health from you. You can still give this item to other characters. Basically, yes, exactly. So basically, you can kill everyone in the game with this. That absolutely everyone. So we found out about it, and we're like, well, well, can you do about it? Sure. Let's keep it in. So we didn't squish it. We found it to be very amusing because it's not a very easy way to it's not a very easy way to cheese the game because, like you take only 1 hit point. Most characters have much more than that. But still,
I could just imagine the amount of like it reminds me of like in like Fallout games, you like put mines in people's pockets and stuff. It's the same idea of you just go, hold on 1 second, and we're just gonna walk away now. So
Yes.
the next question I had for you, because obviously we're talking about there are obviously very obvious inspirations to this games. So if you had to blindly pick one that you get to dream work on, would you work on more of a Wasteland game or more of a Fallout game?
Have these two choices, like Fallout or Wasteland. Now, well, we're kind of working on a more Fallout game right now, so I guess just to make it interesting for myself, I would probably pick a more Wasteland type of game next.
Interesting. Okay. And then finally, I've got to obviously ask you after you've gone through this environment, you've got to enjoy a lot of making this game. What after
Wouldn't say we had to endure a lot. I mean, it's like we have fun doing it. Of course, it's not always fun, but for the most part, it's we enjoy ourselves.
Let me phrase you. When I say game development's endearing, it is the end product is really fun. There are moments in the in between though that everyone always agrees they want to go kill someone because it's game development. What has been your favorite memory or moment kind of going through the experience of making these games kind of?
Ooh, I think maybe the most memorable, I guess, moment was when we were on our Kickstarter campaign, and it was going kind of meh at first. Then a big YouTuber actually made a video about us, and that was the first video about Atom. Like, no, not the first video, but first big video about Atom. And for me, that was very I was like, oh, that's so cool. I mean, like a lot of you always watched kind of as an audience. You watch a video about some game somebody made, maybe a Let's Player plays it, and you're like, yeah, that's cool. But when you're like actually one of those who made this game, it was very cool feeling, very interesting. I was reading the comments, people were writing like, oh, it's a great game. I was like, oh, thank you. Some people were like, where is this? Something bad. I was like, well, okay, let's go to the next comment. But still, it was an interesting experience, So yeah, that's just out of my head, something that I remember, like this explosion of different opinions and stuff like that. It was very interesting. If you think about it, there's probably been a lot more of such moments. Milestones.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank you for sitting down with me to talk about the game. Can you tell everyone how they find and buy these fun games?
Excuse me?
Could you tell everyone now how would we wanted to buy Atom? Where would we buy it? How do we buy it? All that fun stuff.
Oh yeah. So you can find Atom on as well as Trudograd on Steam and on the good old games GOG.com, of course. So that's basically two websites where you can buy both Atom and Trudograd. Well, Trudograd is early access. I say just buy Atom.
Perfect. So yeah, and then it's AtomRPG.com, I believe, is the website.
Yeah, but it's more like it's like this is Atom RPG, but there's not a lot of information about it. Maybe we're going to make this website a bit more robust in the future, but at the moment it's bare bones, I guess.
And thanks for sitting down and talking about the game, and I look forward to see how your brand new game does, and the stories of it being in early access after more than a few days of the chaos that, as we said, you said your early chaos of dealing with it on launch has been.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
This podcast was a product of the SWW Show. You can find more at the swwshow.com or facebook.com/the SWW store or twitter.com/SWW. You can find out more about Mike at Mikey_Maroney on Twitter and more about AJ at Losivor on Twitter. Remember, new episodes come out twice a month, one focusing on the new entertainment news and one focusing on Movie Club, so new and an old movie. You can find out more again at the SWWshow.com, and you can find the show on podcast services around the globe.